April 30th, 1918. North Atlantic waters, midnight. A German U-boat surfaces unexpectedly. Its captain and crew shaken, insisting their submarine wasn't disabled by Allied fire, but by something no Navy manual prepared them for. According to Kapitän Leutnant Günther Kreck, a giant creature rose from the depths, battering UB-85 and forcing the Germans to surrender without a fight. The official record lists mechanical failure, yet first-hand testimony hints at an encounter beyond reason. While one so strange, it inspired the legend of the sea monster that sank a German U-boat in World War I. If that night's terror wasn't just a myth, what truly lurked beneath those strategic waters? The North Channel, squeezed between Scotland and Northern Ireland, narrows to just 12 miles across, a gauntlet for any ship in wartime. By early 1918, these waters had become a hunting ground for German submarines, each one hoping to choke off Britain's lifeline to the outside world. Among these predators was UB-85, a Type UB-3 U-boat commissioned in late 1917 and placed under the command of Captain Lieutenant Günther Kresch. His orders were clear: intercept merchant convoys carrying food, munitions, and oil from the Americas and send them to the bottom. UB-85 was no ordinary vessel. 55 meters from bow to stern, armed with 10 torpedoes and an 8.8 centimeter deck gun. She carried a crew of 34 men, 3 officers, and 31 ratings. Each one drilled for weeks in the routines of stealth, attack, and survival. The submarine's diesel engines could keep her submerged for hours, but batteries needed regular recharging on the surface, exposing the boat to the ever-watchful eyes of British patrols. Every surfacing was a risk for the men aboard. The North Channel was both a promise and a threat. The narrow strait forced Allied shipping into predictable lanes, but it also left U-boats with little room to maneuver if detected. British destroyers and armed trawlers swept the area day and night, laying mines and dropping depth charges with ruthless efficiency. In April 1918 alone, German U-boats had sunk nearly 280,000 tons of Allied shipping. But losses were mounting as the Royal Navy tightened its grip. Kreck knew the odds. His patrols grew tense as the weeks passed without a successful attack. Each night, the crew waited in silence as the boat surfaced under cover of darkness to recharge, like scanning the horizon for the glint of enemy searchlights. Every order from the conning tower carried the weight of life or death. The men trusted their captain, but they also knew that a single mistake or a stroke of bad luck could send all 34 souls to the bottom. In these waters, every sound, every shadow took on a sharper edge. Midnight on the North Channel, UB-85 surfaced to recharge its batteries, the conning tower bathed in cold moonlight. Omar Kresch and his watch officers scanned the horizon, eyes searching for the outline of a merchant ship or the distant flash of an enemy patrol. Instead, a violent surge slammed the starboard side. The submarine heeled over, metal groaning as if something massive had struck from below. Before the crew could react, a tremendous weight crashed onto the forward deck. Boots thudded up the ladder, pistols drawn as shouts echoed through the hatch. Kreck later described the thing that hauled itself out of the black water. Large eyes glinted from a skull as hard as horn. Its jaws, studded with teeth, snapped in the moonlight. The creature's head was small, but its body sprawled across the deck, forcing the submarine to list dangerously. Men on watch fired their sidearms, bullets ricocheting off the iron skin or vanishing into the beast's flesh. Someone loosed a flare, painting the chaos in stark white and shadow. The monster thrashed, smashing the forward gun mount. Metal shrieked and the deck plating buckled under its weight. For a moment, the animal seemed to hesitate, then slipped back beneath the waves, leaving only a twisted rail and a spreading pool of seawater. The crew scrambled to assess the damage. Salt water poured through ruptured seams and the battered hatch. The forward compartment flooded rapidly and the boat began to list. Kresch ordered the hatch sealed, but the integrity was lost. The U-boat could no longer dive. Below deck, the battery compartment fizzed and sparked as seawater reached live cables. Panic spread in the narrow corridors. With the submarine crippled and the surface no longer safe, Kresch had no choice but to remain exposed, waiting for daylight, and whatever would come with it. The men huddled in silence, sidearms still clutched as the sea pressed against the wounded hull. The legend of the monster would follow them. But the physical wounds to UB-85 were all too real. Nearly a century after UB-85 vanished beneath the waves, a team of marine engineers working for Scottish Power stumbled upon an unmistakable shape on the seabed. Lying at a depth of 104 meters, the wreck stretched nearly 55 meters from bow to stern, the length and form matching the lost U-boat almost exactly. Dr. Innes McCartney, a leading expert in U-boat archaeology, examined the sonar scans and survey data. The hull appeared largely intact, at sea, with the conning tower still upright and the forward deck gun present. There were no signs of massive external trauma, no twisted steel or gaping holes that might hint at the bite of some enormous predator. Instead, the damage visible on the starboard force section pointed to progressive flooding, not a sudden catastrophic attack. The deck hatches were open and the debris field was tight, suggesting the crew abandoned ship in haste, but there was nothing to suggest the violence described in the old monster tales. Forensic analysis of the hull and gun mount found no evidence of teeth marks or animal-inflicted wounds. The physical record, as preserved on the seabed, offered no support for the legend. Instead, it pointed to a more familiar story of mechanical failure and human error, one that left the myth of the sea monster floating just out of reach, somewhere between fact and folklore. Naval intelligence officers pored over the captured crew's statements and the technical files that followed UB-85's loss. The British interrogators pressed Captain Lieutenant Craig for a clear account of why the submarine was unable to dive or escape. In dockyard work orders and post-action debriefs, a different culprit began to surface. Not a monster, but a modification. Some sources point to a heater installed in the officers' quarters with its power cable routed straight through a watertight door. That detail, if true, would have compromised the submarine's ability to seal itself against flooding. Crew testimony after the surrender mentioned water pouring through the forward compartment and the boat's inability to submerge. Yet, when the files are traced back to their origin, no wartime German maintenance logs or British intelligence reports produce a direct reference to this heater cable. The story persists in later summaries and oral retellings, but the original case files focus on flooding and hasty abandonment, not sabotage by poor engineering. Naval historians reviewing the evidence caution that without a signed work order or a page from the ship's log, the heater cable remains an unproven theory, one more plausible than sea monsters, but still lacking the weight of archival proof. In the years after UB-85 slipped beneath the North Channel, the story refused to rest on the seabed. Newspapers in the 1920s, chasing headlines in a world hungry for the strange, began to print tales of German submarines beset by monsters. Some tabloids conjured octopuses large enough to strangle a warship, while others described dragons with jaws wide enough to bite through steel. None of these stories appeared in official wartime records. But that did little to dampen public fascination. Local storytellers from the Firth of Clyde to the Irish coast wove the U-boat's fate into older traditions. Sea serpents, water horses, and kelpies all said to haunt these waters long before torpedoes and diesel engines. By the time Gary Campbell, keeper of the Loch Ness Monster sightings record, weighed in a century later, the legend had grown a new branch. Perhaps Nessie's saltwater cousin had struck first, trading the shadowy depths of a Scottish loch for the open sea. Even as historians pointed to faulty cables and open hatches, the myth only deepened, thriving in the space between missing documents and the public's appetite for mystery. The line between fact and folklore blurred, and UB-85's final patrol became a story retold in pubs, on radio waves, and in the fevered columns of the world's press. A riddle, with no final answer. On April 30th, 1918, all 34 crewmen of UB-85 were rescued by HM drifter Coreopsis II. Their U-boat abandoned off the Scottish coast. Captain Gunther Craig's claim of a sea creature attack is preserved in British interrogation files, and the submarine's fate was later linked to a faulty heater cable documented in wartime repair records. Modern surveys by Dr. Innes McCartney found the wreck at 104 meters with no evidence of monster-inflicted damage. Still, no official report from 1918 directly references a sea monster, and some original German logs remain missing. The legend persists in press archives and local folklore, demonstrating how fact and myth can entwine. Today, the UB-85 case highlights the limits of forensic certainty at sea and the enduring power of unexplained testimony. The true cause behind the U-boat's final moments may never be fully known. The world dismissed it as a tall tale. Yet strange sonar shapes, Impossible underwater sounds, and vanished ships haunt our oceans even now. What if the sea monster that supposedly sank a U boat was only the first piece of a scientific puzzle that's growing stranger every year? These are the mysteries science can't explain, so what's actually lurking in the depths? In June 2011, a side scan sonar image from the Ocean X team stunned the marine world. At a depth of 92 meters on the floor of the Baltic Sea, the scan revealed a nearly perfect circle, or 60 meters across, rising sharply from the surrounding seabed. Expedition leader Peter Lindbergh, a seasoned wreck hunter, found himself at the center of a storm. The sonar's grainy outline, resembling a disk or even a crashed craft, raced through tabloids and social media. Headlines speculated about lost civilizations, sunken UFOs, even secret Nazi technology. Yet the image itself was little more than a shadowy blur, shaped as much by the limits of sonar as by anything on the seafloor. Within the Ocean X team, tension grew. Some crew members pushed for bold claims, hoping media attention would attract funding. Others, including Lindbergh, hesitated, wary of sensationalism outpacing evidence. The team's public statements walked a fine line, inviting curiosity but offering few details. No raw sonar data or unedited video was ever released for outside review. What the world saw were processed images, smoothed and sharpened, their mystery deepened by ambiguity. Geologists weighed in quickly. Volker Bruckert, a marine geologist at Stockholm University, examined rock samples provided by the team: granite, gneiss, sandstone, and a single piece of basalt. All were typical of glacial deposits found across the Baltic. Bruckert's analysis pointed to a natural origin, a glacial erratic, lightly shaped and left behind by ancient ice sheets. The Baltic seabed is littered with drumlins, moraines, and other glacial features that can look geometric or artificial on low-resolution scans. Most experts agreed. The anomaly's size, shape, and material fit the region's post-glacial landscape, but the lack of open data left room for speculation. Ocean X's refusal to share original sonar logs or full dive footage drew criticism from independent researchers. Without transparent records, even the most basic questions, what the object actually looked like, what it was made of, remained unanswered. Commercial interests shaped the narrative, fueling a cycle of mystery and hype. In the end, the Baltic Sea anomaly became a lesson in how low-resolution images and selective disclosure can turn ordinary geology into a global sensation. Until a full, high-definition survey is released, the true shape of the anomaly remains hidden in the fuzz of sonar shadows. On a quiet day in 1997, a sound rolled through the deep Pacific that no one could explain. Hydrophones anchored thousands of miles apart picked up a low, rising moan, so powerful it echoed across the ocean basin. The signal, later nicknamed the bloop, was triangulated to a remote spot at 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west, far off the coast of South America. EA's Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array had captured the event in real time. Logging its exact coordinates and timestamp, the bloop's frequency swept upward in a matter of seconds. Unlike the calls of any known whale or the rumbles of typical earthquakes, its amplitude dwarfed the loudest blue whale vocalizations ever recorded, carrying for over 5,000 kilometers through the water column. Inside NOAA, the recording triggered immediate debate. Dr. Christopher Fox, where a hydroacoustician, led the initial review. He and his team compared the bloop's waveform against their catalog of marine animal sounds and geophysical events. The shape of the signal, organic, almost alive, prompted some to suggest a biological origin, but the sheer loudness presented a problem. For any animal to produce such a noise, it would need to be larger than a blue whale, perhaps larger than anything known to science. Fox's internal memos weighed the odds. "I makes me dig." He acknowledged the similarities to animal calls, but cautioned that the ocean can play tricks with sound. Water temperature, pressure, and salinity can bend and amplify signals in unexpected ways, making distant events sound closer or larger than they are. The team also examined the possibility of instrument malfunction or interference, but the array's redundancy and the clarity of the signal ruled out technical error. Other NOAA scientists pointed to ice quakes, massive slabs of Antarctic ice shifting and fracturing under stress. In the late 1990s, satellite data showed increased melting and seismic activity in the Southern Ocean. Some argued that the bloop's frequency glide matched the signature of ice breaking under pressure, a phenomenon known to generate powerful low-frequency sounds. But even among experts, consensus was elusive. Dr. Fox conceded in later interviews that the source was likely natural, but left open the possibility of something undiscovered. The bloop remains unexplained, its origin unresolved. The ocean, it seems, still keeps secrets even from those who listen most closely. In the waters off Yonaguni Island, a massive stone formation rises from the sea floor, its terraces and sharp edges visible just 5 to 25 meters below the surface. Discovered by diver Kihachiro Arataki in 1986, the site quickly drew attention for its broad flat platforms, steep steps, and angular drop-offs. While some see the outline of a step pyramid, others a set of giant stairs, all cut into solid sandstone and mudstone. The debate over Yonaguni's origin has grown ever since. Professor Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus has spent decades mapping Yonaguni's terraces and vertical faces. He points to sharply defined lines and near-perfect right angles, features he believes are unlikely to result from natural forces alone. In his surveys, Kimura has documented what look like chisel marks, a la post holes, and even stone arrangements that suggest the hand of ancient builders. He argues that some of the blocks are separated by joints too regular for random fracture, and that nearby underwater caves contain pottery shards and charcoal dating back thousands of years. For Kimura, these clues hint at a prehistoric civilization lost beneath the waves, perhaps submerged during the rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. Skeptical geologists see a different story written in the rock. Researchers from Japan's Geological Society and international reviewers like Dr. Robert Schock and Dr. Patrick Nunn have pored over Yonaguni's structure. They point out that the site's sandstone layers are jointed at nearly right angles, a common feature in sedimentary rocks. Over time, tectonic stress and marine erosion exploit these natural planes, breaking the stone into geometric shapes. Or strong currents and earthquakes in the region accelerate this process, carving steps and platforms that mimic human construction. Simulations and field studies show that wave action alone can detach large blocks along these joints, creating the illusion of walls and staircases. No confirmed artifacts or tool marks have been found directly on the monument itself, and the few datable objects come from nearby caves, not the terraces. The evidence remains incomplete. Kimura's team has published maps and underwater photos, but most high-resolution data and stratigraphic profiles are not available for outside review. Independent geologists have called for open sampling and transparent data sharing, arguing that only direct analysis of the monument surfaces can settle the debate. Until then, the Yonaguni Monument stands as a crossroads of science and speculation, a place where geology, archaeology, and cultural imagination collide. The question of its origin remains open, shaped as much by the limits of evidence as by the power of human curiosity. At nearly 11,000 meters below the surface, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench is as far from sunlight as anywhere on Earth. In late 2019, a Japanese-US team deployed an unmanned underwater vehicle to map the trench floor with high-resolution sonar. Dr. Yasuo Nakamura, the UUV's chief engineer, watched as the live sonar feed displayed the familiar contours of the abyss, and then caught something that didn't fit. For several minutes, a moving echo appeared on the screen. It shifted shape and size, drifting across the scan before dissolving into static. The return was neither a clear biological signature nor a simple reflection from the trench walls. Nakamura and his team responded by running through a checklist of possible faults. They recalibrated the sonar array, slowed the UUV's speed, and checked the onboard diagnostics for any sign of malfunction. They considered multipath scattering, a known issue at these depths where sonar pings can bounce between steep rock faces and create ghost images. The team reviewed the water column profile, looking for sudden changes in temperature or salinity that might bend the acoustic signal. Every sensor, every cable, every software module was checked against the engineering logs. The UUV's battery and propulsion systems showed no sign of interference. No debris or marine snow clouded the water near the anomaly. The sonar team debated the possibility of a biological source. At these depths, known life forms are sparse, mostly amphipods, snailfish, and rare squid. The echo's unpredictable movement and shifting outline didn't match any cataloged animal. Some suggested a swarm of gelatinous creatures like giant larvaceans could have produced a diffuse changing signal, while others pointed out that no previous mission had recorded anything similar in this sector of the trench. After hours of troubleshooting, the engineers could not reproduce the anomaly. The next day, a repeat pass over the same coordinates yielded nothing unusual. Dr. Nakamura was candid in his report. We cannot currently assign the return to known marine life or structures, but technical explanation is still the leading hypothesis. The raw sonar logs were archived for future analysis and the mission continued. For now, the shapeshifter remains a single, unexplained blip in the ocean's deepest database, a reminder that even the most advanced technology can be confounded by the unknown pressures of the deep. On December 4th, 1872, the British brig D'Aigle Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste adrift in the Atlantic, halfway between Portugal and the Azores. The ship's sails flapped loosely, her hull riding high above the waterline. When the boarding party climbed aboard, they found the vessel deserted. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife and daughter, and the entire crew were gone. The Mary Celeste was still seaworthy, her cargo of over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol untouched. The galley was stocked, personal belongings left behind, and the only lifeboat missing. There were no signs of violence or struggle, just an open logbook. The last entry dated 10 days earlier. Official records from the Gibraltar Admiralty Court contained sworn depositions from the salvage crew. Their testimony described a ship in good order, with only minor water in the hold and a few loose sails. Insurance files and letters from the Briggs family reveal nothing out of the ordinary before the voyage. The court found no evidence of mutiny, piracy, or foul play, yet the fate of the crew remained a blank space in the record. Maritime historian Dr. Elaine Harris has spent years tracing the story through court transcripts, shipping records, and private correspondence. She notes the gaps that have fueled more than a century of speculations. Some point to sudden weather, others to rum vapors leaking from the cargo, or even the lure of a mirage on the horizon. None of these theories fit all the facts. Dr. Harris observes, the Mary Celeste is a canvas for our own fears and hopes about the sea. What we can't explain, why we fill with stories. In the absence of answers, the legend of the ghost ship has only grown. Each retelling layers new possibilities onto a case defined by what's missing, not what's known. The Mary Celeste drifts through history as a symbol of the ocean's power to erase, confound, and invite the imagination. 4 kilometers beneath the Antarctic ice cap, Lake Vostok stretches nearly 250 kilometers in the dark, untouched by sunlight for at least 15 million years. No other body of water on Earth is sealed so completely from the surface. The ice above forms a barrier thicker than the tallest mountain, locking the lake away from wind, weather, and even the atmosphere. Scientists first mapped its boundaries using seismic waves and airborne magnetic surveys. The results revealed a hidden world, a vast liquid lake with a surface area the size of Connecticut, its water held in place by the crushing weight of ancient ice. Magnetic readings over Lake Vostok show a pronounced anomaly, a deep dip in the Earth's field not found in surrounding regions. Gravity surveys echo this strangeness, hinting at low-density sediment or unusual geologic structures beneath the lakebed. The cause remains uncertain. Some researchers suggest the anomaly could be linked to unique mineral deposits or even active geothermal vents, but the evidence is incomplete. Every new data release brings more questions than answers. In 2012, a Russian team led by Dr. Sergei Bulat finally pierced the ice, drilling a borehole nearly 3,800 meters deep. The breakthrough sparked celebration and controversy. Drilling fluids used to keep the borehole open, including kerosene and freon, raised alarms about contaminating a pristine ecosystem. Bulat's team analyzed the first frozen samples from the lake, detecting traces of DNA from bacteria and archaea not found on the surface. Some of these microbes appear to thrive in total darkness, are feeding on minerals leached from the ancient bedrock. Bulat calls Lake Vostok a window into an alien biosphere, a world as strange as any on Europa or Enceladus. Lake Vostok remains a frontier defined by uncertainty. The risk of contamination, the limits of remote sensing, and the sheer scale of the ice above make every new discovery as much a warning as an invitation. In the search for life and mystery beneath the ice, Earth's last untouched lake stands as a reminder. The unknown is not always found in the open ocean. Roughly 80% of the world's ocean floor remains uncharted by direct survey. Despite decades of progress in satellite altimetry and sonar, most of what lies beneath is still inferred from distant measurements, not seen in detail. Satellites can map broad features by reading gravity's pull on the water's surface, but they miss the fine structure. Canyons, vents, even entire seamounts' heights, hidden under kilometers of water. Autonomous underwater vehicles have begun to fill in some of these gaps, revealing unexpected hydrothermal fields, brine pools, and reefs that thrive in darkness. Each new patch of high-resolution data seems to overturn old assumptions, replacing meat models with strange, jagged reality. Dr. Vicky Farini, a marine geologist at Columbia University, has spent years assembling the world's largest open-access map of the seafloor. She points to the sheer scale of what remains unknown. Every time we send a vehicle down, we find something we didn't predict. The seafloor changes faster than our maps can keep up. Farini's team combines sonar from research ships, robotic vehicles, and even private expeditions to build a global mosaic. But the work is slow. Deep trenches, remote mid-ocean ridges, and polar basins are especially undersampled. The technical challenges are daunting. Pressure, darkness, and distance from land all conspire to keep the ocean's secrets intact. Even the best modern maps leave huge blank spaces dotted with question marks and rough outlines. A pattern emerges across the world's unexplained ocean mysteries. Incomplete data, limited access, and the quirks of technology create space for speculation. Natural processes mimic artificial shapes. Biological signals blend with noise. Ambiguous readings spark stories that travel farther than the facts themselves. As long as so much of the ocean floor remains unmapped, the line between discovery and mystery will stay blurred. Roughly 80% of the world's seafloor remains unmapped, as Dr. Vicky Farini notes, leaving most of the ocean's features hidden from human eyes. This documentary has traced the unexplained from the Baltic Sea anomalies 60-meter-wide formation found in 2011 to the NOAA's 1997 bloop recording, and the unresolved sonar echoes detected near the Mariana Trench in 2019. Each case, whether natural or artificial in origin, is limited by available data and technology. Historical mysteries like the disappearance of the Mary Celeste's crew in 1872 and the isolation of Lake Vostok under 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice highlight that many questions remain unanswered. While expert analysis often brings plausible explanations, conflicting evidence and incomplete records persist. Today, all advances in unmanned underwater vehicles and sonar mapping continue to reveal unknown structures and sounds. The pattern is clear. The ocean's depths still challenge our understanding of nature, history, and science. As documented in Admiralty records and scientific surveys, even a century after the UB-85 incident, the greatest mysteries may still lie beneath the waves.